Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. Having a little coffee here tonight. And I wanted to take a little time to reflect back on the last couple of years and talk to you guys about some of the things that I've had during the last 2 years and some of the things that I had way before that. Um, that I have not regretted buying. I mean, most people when they start getting into preparedness, there's some things that they buy and they use, or some things that were good purchases, and then there's other things that they either don't use or it didn't work out the way they had planned. But I got a few things here that I want to talk to you guys about that I have not regretted purchasing and having at all. And I think now that we've had a chance to go through the last couple years here, and a lot of us had preps before that. Some people started prepping at the beginning of this situation, and there's always new people that are coming into it. So I thought I would kind of share from my own experience some of these things that I've had here that were good buys, were good purchases, and that have benefited me, and maybe you guys can take something from it. It's always good to reflect like this, being at the end of 2021 right now. I think it's a good time to reflect on some of this stuff because, like I said, we've all seen things transpire. We've had a chance to cut our teeth in a real world situation. I mean, this has been, there hasn't been quite anything like this in my lifetime, and it's still ongoing. And the first thing here that I'm going to talk to you guys about, it's kind of cliche. It's one of those cliche prepper items. Everybody talks about it, all the bigger channels talk about it, and they endorse it and whatever. And I didn't have one for the longest time. And what it is it's a Berkey water filter. And here are some Berkey filters here that I keep on hand for the one that I got. And I always put it off because I had multiple small water filters here. And I actually have a house water filter that I installed years ago. And I'm like, why spend that kind of money? I've got, a house water filter here. I got the small water filters here. So I put it off, procrastinated. And finally I'm like, you know what, I'm going to get one. It'd be nice to have, the redundancy. And when I got it, I'm like, put it together and stuff, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna dump some of my just tap water in it here and just see how it is. So I started dumping my tap water into it. The tap water that already went through the house filter, mind you. And slowly but surely, I started to notice on those Berkey filters a small sediment ring on the bottom, and I'm like, wow. Even though my house water was filtered, that Berkey is still taking stuff out of the filtered water that I'm putting into it. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, that was I would have never expected that. And it was one of those things that I kind of slap myself in the forehead now and say, you know what, I should have bought one of these a lot sooner. I kind of love it now. Everything, all the water that I use, I pretty much run through that Berkey, whether it's tap water or any other kind of water that I get. Well water, whatever. I run anything through that Berkey, and it was one of the probably one of the best preps that I ever bought. Also, probably one of the most expensive when you look back at it, but I think it's worth it in the long run. Another thing is called a motor snorkel, and what a motor snorkel is a motor snorkel is a conversion kit for a generator so it can run on propane. And I don't have it right out here because it's a big unit, but I did do a video on my generator, and a long time ago, and I'll put a link in the description for that generator video if you guys want to look at it. And I actually show that motor snorkel in that video. And one of the nice things about that motor snorkel conversion, so my generator can run on propane. The first thing is propane's a lot easier to store than regular gasoline, and second of the gas tank that was on my generator was like a 6-gallon gas tank. 6 gallons of gasoline is heavy. So if my wife or somebody else has to move that generator around and fire it up, if that had 6 gallons of gas in it, it was ungodly heavy. Well, now there's no gas in it because, it's hooked up to a propane tank. It's much easier to move, and it's much easier to start because you just prime it, and it shoots the propane right in the cylinder, and even with the recoil 2 pulls, it starts right up. So that motor snorkel conversion on my generator has been one of the best things that I ever bought, and it has been extremely beneficial to us. There's been different times we've had power outages since then. There's been different times other people have had power outages, and we've loaded up the generator, and we loaded up propane tank and took it over to their place and fired it up for them to help them out. So that's kind of what it's all about too. A couple other things that I got here are small things, and one of them is ammunition. You can see the price on there, hopefully. That says $1.20 on this. These are some 410 slugs that I bought years and years ago already. You would never find a box of 410 slugs anymore for $1.20. And about 2006, I kind of came to the realization, I was always a hunter and a sport shooter, and I kind of come to the realization, you know what, this ammunition is a weak link here. I mean, if something happens, there ain't going to be no ammunition. And it wasn't just my own intuition that that came up with that. Some of the old timers that I knew, and I think I've mentioned this in some other videos as well, but they kind of figured something was going to happen during World War II, so they went prior to World War II, so they actually had a little bit of ammunition put away. And when World War II happened, there was no ammunition. So any of the guys that hunted and stuff, they had all that ammunition and stuff prior to World War II starting. And there were some old timers around here that still went up north and still went deer hunting during World War II when nobody else did, because they couldn't find any ammunition. But because these guys had thought ahead and they actually had some ammunition put away, they could still hunt. And starting about 2006, I said, you know what, I'm going to start slowly buying a box of ammunition on my paydays and just kind of stock up slow like that. Well, I did that for a couple of years. Well, 2008 was when all the ammunition shortages started to happen, and from that point forward, it's basically been one shortage ever since. So, and it's still ongoing. So, I'm really glad that I went ahead and I did that. So, I saved me a lot of money, and now when there's things short, I still got enough ammunition where I can hunt and still shoot from time to time, so I can stay in practice. The next thing I actually mentioned in a early video that I did called Forgotten Preps, and it was canning lids. And I don't know if you guys can see on there, but that's like $2.19 for a box of canning lids. Canning stuff has been absolutely crazy. It's hard to find. When you do find it, it's ridiculously expensive. And the old timers always said, when it comes to canning, when you're done canning for the season, you always go ahead and buy your stuff for the next year so you got it on hand. And that's pretty much what I keep for canning. I keep my canning stuff for next year ahead of time. So I have always got that to fall back on in case there's a shortage or something like what's been going on here in the last couple of years. Canning stuff has just been terribly hard to find. It's been terribly expensive because everybody's starting to realize, you know what, it's beneficial to have a garden and kind of put up some of my own stuff. So this year when I was done canning, I'm going to start, I've got all year now, I can start slowly but surely looking for a little canning stuff so I can put that up, and I have that for next year. So I always try to keep a year ahead on all my canning stuff. Now this here is a bit of a, I guess, more recent thing, but this is the good old-fashioned fish antibiotics that everybody talks about. And there hasn't been any type of shortage or run on this stuff yet, but you know what? All of this, the ingredients in this kind of stuff, all comes from overseas. Someday something could happen, or those fish antibiotics could just be, how do I want to say it, just outlawed. I think the time's going to come when you're not going to be able to get them anymore. That's just going to be a done thing, and that's just the way it is. But as an emergency preparedness item, it's a great thing to have. And I'm expecting at some point in time that's just going to go away. So it's no time like the present to get some of that stuff and do your research on that, and decide whether or not that's something you want to have in your emergency medical kit. And the last thing I got here is kind of an honorable mention. It was something I mentioned in that Forgotten Preps video too, that I'll put a link in the description for you guys to go back and look at a much younger version of myself in that video. But It's this stuff right here. I always have said that people should keep a little fertilizer in their preps because, you know, if you want to grow a garden, you want to grow, you know, decent stuff, you might have to augment your soil, and, you know, not everybody can generate enough compost and stuff like that to, you know, get your small garden going. And I mentioned that in that Forgotten Preps video, and now from what I'm hearing, there's going to be, you know, more shortages and more price hikes in fertilizer. So unfortunately, again, with that, I was right. And there's no time like the present to stock up on some of that stuff while it's still available. I actually got that bottle right there and a few other small bags and bottles when they clearanced everything out in late summer here in my local stores to make room for some of the other stuff that was coming in for the seasonality of it. But I got myself a little extra fertilizer, and that's another thing that I always, you know, keep here just in case I got to go a season and I got to rely more on my garden. It's good to have, you know, some fertilizer around. I know the organic is the best way to go, but sometimes you gotta do what you got to do to keep things going. But I just thought this was a good time to reflect back on some of these things and kind of for me to share that information with you guys and let you look into it. You know, there's always things, if you got something in the back of your mind that you think, hey, you know what, this might be short up in the future, maybe I should grab a couple extra, you know, containers of this or whatever it might be and put that stuff up, because you know what, your first impression is usually your correct impression. So if there's something like that that you think that you might need in the future, go ahead and get that, and that way you're ahead of the curve. So anyway, this is Modern Refugee. I appreciate all my subscribers out there. Hope you guys get a little information, a little entertainment on my video. This is just kind of a reflection video, and hopefully some of you guys can get something out of it. But anyway, you guys take care.